We are live.
We are live.
There's upstairs.
Live on the other side. Okay, committee, we are live. We are waiting for Michael O'Grady. Was probably the most difficult ledge council to find on your schedule. Awfully busy. And we are going to take up S-124, which has some fees in it. But I wanted to poll the committee, and I'm waiting for my last two people to show up on what we would like to do with 135. The one thing, I think if we're gonna go forward at all, and I've been told we do have some people that would like to talk about having to take up to $500 in cash. So we will have some more testimonies. I gathered that the bankers would like to talk if we're going forward with this. I think I've made it clear that if there is a court case deciding if a state does have jurisdiction in this area, if we want to go forward, I would not want to go forward until the courts decide that we do have jurisdiction in this interchange fee. But if we decide we do, I think we need to talk to the Attorney General and find out what their thoughts are and what their staffing capabilities are.
So, here you go.
So
I'm interested in pursuing
okay,
it.
so let's, Senator, I'm gonna poll the committee on whether or not we're interested in going forward with S-135, which at this point, I've got bankers that want to talk. I've got some other merchant group that has some concerns about the cash section. The bankers think things aren't as simple as we may have been led to believe. There is a lawsuit that is determining whether or not we have jurisdiction. So the next witness I would have in would be the Attorney General. So,
I think we should hear from the Restaurant Association.
okay, we can hear from
They
them.
would benefit more than any other.
I don't think we can hear from them, but I don't think it's a question of who would benefit. To me, it's a question of do we have legal authority?
Oh, I hear you, but in terms of the logistics, because I know
Okay.
you were concerned about whether the logistics would work for small.
Oh, there's Michael. Okay, so, yeah, don't kill the bankers. We reserve the right to do that. Committee.
Oh,
Senator Brock, we're polling the committee on whether or not you want to pursue S-135, which at least as far as having the Attorney General come in and talk to us about the Illinois lawsuit and whether or not it would be worth our while to go forward, what our risk of lawsuit is.
My immediate reaction, when I heard that only one of the state is pursuing this and that state is in litigation, I stopped listening.
Okay. So you don't want to go forward at this point.
Again,
Yeah.
we've been down this road so many times before. A, it's not worth it. B, the chance of success is minimal until the law is clear. And you can put it on the back burner, and once you have some clarity, then it's worth doing. It is not worth spending our money to join litigation on causes like this.
I've got one now. Senator Beck, do you?
I'm willing to learn more, but I kind of think this is a good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but if we have the Attorney General in, that's okay.
I would like to learn more.
All right, one more.
But I would also be reluctant if the attorney general is willing to litigate. Again, it's spending our money to litigate an issue that the
Well-
situation hasn't changed. And clarity is no more better than it was then.
And I
I just
yeah, I think
thought.
Yeah, you're right. Very similar to mine, host Senator Brock and Senator Beck, the interstate commerce questions about us regulating these fees of on banks that are not necessary, or services that are not provided just in Vermont. And I also want to just say, merchants do currently have the option to charge these fees on the consumer. So there is a path for them to not have to hold this, and they can give discounts, and they do now, to Venmo or to checks, or to taking cash. So I think there are market solutions. And lastly, I just want to say these interchange fees do provide a service, in my opinion. When you collect and harvest or take the risk of taking that cash, that avoids other costs associated to handling the cash. So I'm happy to learn more, but I agree. I do see this as potential, very likely dead end.
Okay. So far I've got 3 that are willing to learn more, but they're not really, unless the Attorney General said, right on, we can win this. And it won't cost anything. They're not going totally very far. Senator Meadows, I'm gonna stop that in and go on.
I'll keep going on the 3 prior. I didn't hear a lot from my constituents about credit card fees and how they work in an interchange and all this and that. And I'll just remind everybody that we have, I think, something I do hear a lot from my constituents about coming our way is education finance. So if time allows to listen to more of this, I'm fine with that. But I think we have more pressing issues that my constituents, at least, talk about.
Okay. So I think I've heard the majority say we'll hear from the Attorney General. Does that work for
Sure.
you?
Yeah.
Does it work for you?
Sure,
And you
that
want to have
is
the
fine.
restaurants in?
Well, only if we're moving forward with it.
Okay.
Like, I'm fine if it doesn't sound like people are excited about it. And I agree with Senator Mathos that our biggest thing has to be the education finance stuff. So I don't want to take too much time doing something that's probably not going to go anywhere. But I think that the bill's intention of helping out small merchants is a good one.
Yes.
And it's a way to do it that I think gets at a larger issue of big multinational corporations kind of screwing us all over.
David and Goliath. I don't know what it is for us, but okay, so we will ask the Attorney General to come over and comment on S-135 and if they, what their thoughts are about going forward with it. Depending on what they say, then we will have everybody else back in. Claire will have your people in if they want to come or write a letter on the cash portion. But we'll get your concern from the record. Okay, now we're going to agriculture. As I said, from money to manure, we have a broad range in this committee. From money to
Should I
manure.
say-
Okay,
You want it up on the screen?
if probably, if you can do it without difficulty.
So what I'm gonna use is the side by side of the Senate Ag
Okay,
bill is introduced at the Senate Natural Resources
And-
proposal as amendment. So that you will see that the language is almost the same.
and there is a House bill that has cut, that ag has,
Yeah.
that would make crossover where this one didn't.
So the same thing.
Yeah, so there's things happening at the other end of the hall. We just need to make a decision on the fees in this bill. And let them know if we want to make any changes. Okay. But apparently this. Yeah, I may pass the Vita bill out this afternoon. $3.98,
Side by side.
and I don't. We haven't done any amendments to $3.98, have we?
No, and I actually, to that point, I got a nice email from Ellen Kaler that I can share with everyone about the name confusion thing. She looked at the bill and I'm just adding.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I think, a straight vote. We haven't gotten any amendments and I think it'll be unanimous, but I can't guarantee it at this point. I didn't ask if anyone didn't hear me, if economic development wanted to take a look at it and was told unless it did something fundamental, no, they didn't feel concerned, so we will get on with that.
Give you a shout out.
Okay,
Here we
should I begin? First context. The Federal Clean Water Act requires delegated state agencies to run 4 or 5 different Clean Water Act permits. And they're called NIPDES permits. Vermont is a delegated state, and one of the NIPDES permits is called the Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation Permit. But when the Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation rule was enacted by EPA in 2004, it had a preamble to it that says EPA encourages states to set up proactive state programs, potentially through Agency of Agriculture, to prevent farms from needing a discharge permit. And that's what Vermont did, set up a program at the Agency of Agriculture. It said that all farms were prohibited from discharging. And therefore, if you have a prohibited discharge, you have no discharge, and you don't need a CAFO permit. And over the years, it's been determined that even though farms are prohibited from discharging, some of them are discharging. And consequently, A&R has not been permitting them when they should have been. And there was a petition from multiple advocates in Vermont to EPA saying to EPA, you need to rescind Vermont's program, its entire NIPDES program, not just CAFO. So wastewater, stormwater, everything industrial, have to rescind all of that. Or tell A&R that they need to start permitting these discharges from CAFOs. So A&R agreed, actually, that they needed to do something. EPA asked for a corrective action plan. Part of the corrective action plan were changes to legislation to clarify that A&R's authority over the CAFO program was solely theirs and not meshed or shared with the Agency of Ag in some way. And that's what this bill in front of you does. It clarifies that authority of A&R, clarifies the continuing role of the Agency of Ag in running a state-based agriculture water quality program. And that's really what it does.
I'm told that the chair is very proud that that the Committee on Natural Resources and the Committee on Agriculture actually agree on this bill, which is a rarity.
Historically, that has not happened.
Let's just say that there was a lot of hard work that went on.
I'm sure there was.
But I have to say the drama and the comedy out of the historical tension, I'm gonna miss that. With that,
Maybe we should try housing again this year.
with that said, there are a couple of fiscal implications in this bill. Currently, large farms and medium farms pay a permit to the Agency of Agriculture. That permit for a large farm is $2,500 a year. For a medium farm is $1,500 a year. Both of those permit fees go into an agricultural water quality special fund. And that was set up in 2015 as part of the Clean Water Initiative to help fund the Agency of Agriculture's clean water work. It doesn't fund all of the Agency of Agriculture's clean water work. They actually need an annual appropriation from the Clean Water Fund to help them pay for all of their clean water work. What this bill will do is those farms that need to get an that need to get a large CAFO permit or a medium CAFO permit, they're gonna start paying their fee to A&R instead of to the Agency of Agriculture. So the Agriculture Water Quality Fund will lose revenue. The A&R Permit Special Fund, Environmental Permit Special Fund will increase revenue. How that plays out in allocation, whether or not you're gonna need additional appropriation to the Ag Water Quality Fund every year. James will probably talk to you about that.
Okay.
And that's what this bill does fiscally, and you can look at the specific language in the side-by-side beginning on page 9 on the side-by-side. You'll see the language about the large CAFO permit about midway through. So during any calendar year in which a person has an active large CAFO issued by A&R, they are going to pay the associated fee. And that shall not be required to pay the $2,500 operating fee to the Agency of Ag. And you'll see that that language is the same in both the Committee on Agriculture and the Committee on Natural Resources.
Not be required. Okay,
And you will see similar language. It's not the same and
okay, so that says it goes to, and then at the bottom it says it doesn't go to.
yeah,
That's a switch, all right.
you got it. And then page 15. This language would be for the medium farm permits. You'll see the operating fee. Person required to obtain a permit for coverage under this section shall submit an annual operating fee of $1,500 to the secretary. The fees collected under this section shall be deposited in the Ag Water Quality Special Fund. So that is just for the medium farm. Someone said, well, why doesn't this say if they were required to get an MFO or a medium CAFO permit from A&R, they don't have to pay this fee. And it's an interesting, the large farm permit is currently not just a water quality permit. The large farm permit is also a siting permit. You need to get a large farm permit to site, and there are provisions of the large farm rules related to vectors and pests and those natures. So it's not a one-to-one permit for a large farm to a large CAFO. And that's why the language says, hey, if you have to get a large CAFO permit, we're not going to require you to pay 2 permits. But the medium CAFO is just the medium CAFO permit and the medium farm operation permit. So the A&R permit, the CAFO permit, and the medium MFO permit, the Agency of Ag permit, they are both water quality. And if you have to get a medium CAFO permit, there's a provision in the 3 VSA 2822, which is A&R's permit fee section, that says you pay this amount and you won't need to get the MFO permit. But if you want clarity and you want symmetry between those 2 fee provisions, you can say a person that's required to pay the $1,500 CAFO, median CAFO permit is not required to pay a fee under this section. That is fine. It's clarifying. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's, and I only know it's absolutely not necessary because I'm like inside baseball. But if you wanted to be there for the public, I think transparent, so you can provide that.
Well, you can do that, just given the,
And if you're not actually making an amendment to this bill, then I'll just raise it when it's added to the miscellaneous bill. To have
okay, I think
that language.
from what I'm hearing is that this bill may sit here and the contents will be amended to the House bill. I don't know if they're replacing them. This is all, so as long as we're okay, and I guess it's the ag fund that's losing the money, right? So we should probably hear from the Department of Agriculture, or we'll hear from James as to how much that is. But we should probably hear from them just to verify that they're okay with this.
So I don't know if they really have a choice.
True,
Um,
but we should hear from
so,
them.
all right, so should I exit?
Committee, any questions? We're not changing the fees, we're just changing where fees get deposited to reflect, I assume, the cost in the changes made above.
So one of the things for a Clean Water Act delegated program, they have to. It's kind of funny. They have to use their permit fees to pay for their program, but no state does that, right? No state actually uses their permit fee, to pay for their program. But you do need to dedicate the permit fee to the program. It doesn't ever cover the cost of the program in any state. But that's why you have to have it dedicated to this fund.
Okay. Okay, any questions, Michael? Okay, thank you. James, wow, I think this is your first run through in this committee.
That's right, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is James Duffy from the Legislative Joint Fiscal Office. I'm new to GFO as of this fall, so it's my first time testifying in front of many of you.
We try not to bite.
That's good, thank you. Madam Chair, I can share my screen to have the fiscal note up behind me if you'd like. So Michael just gave an overview of the fiscal impacts from this bill. They really are limited to implications for permit fee revenue and where they go within the various state special funds. So as it stands now, MFO, medium farm operation permits and large farm operation permits, the fees associated with those are deposited to the Agricultural Water Quality Special Fund. That would remain the case, but you would see some permit holders, some farms, be required to obtain CAFO permits instead of their farm operations permits. The extent that farms are required to shift the permit that they hold or to obtain a CAFO permit, they would then be paying the associated fee to ANR via the Environmental Permits Fund, special fund, which is a different special fund that supports ANR's permitting and compliance and program functions as opposed to AAFM's. JFO has,
No, the fee they are getting, or they are now being required to get in order to avoid having the feds take over everything. And meet compliance at the federal level. They will now, some farms will now be required to get a permit from natural resources, whereas in the past, they were getting them from agriculture. So the money is going from one fund to the other.
and those farms that are categorized as large farms could be required to hold both permits, both the CAFO permit and the large farm operations permit. But in that instance, they would only be required to pay the CAFO permit fee. And then medium farms defined as medium, and Michael just went into some detail about this, would not be required to hold both permits at once.
So
So that
they
in
end up-
either instance, no farm would end up paying
Two.
beyond what they currently are, right?
Okay.
They would pay either $2,500 for their large CAFO permit or for their large farm operations permit, or $1,500 for their
Okay.
MFO for their medium
So
CAFO.
no farmer's gonna pay more,
That's correct.
and it's just where what they pay is what fund it's going into, because that's who's administering the program that they're following.
That's right. Michael also mentioned that there are some implications for the agricultural water quality special fund and transfers to it from the general fund. To the extent that this bill would decrease revenue that flows to AAFM, it could increase the necessary size of future needed transfers from the general fund to the ag water quality special fund. Looked into some of the recent numbers for what the size of those transfers have been versus how much revenue that these permits generate for AAFM currently. And just for example, in fiscal year 24, the MFO and LFO permits combined generated $239,000 for the ag water quality special fund. That's relative to a $6.7 million transfer that was made to that same special fund from the general fund. And so, these could be expected to exacerbate the need for future transfers to some degree, but that FY24 example gives you a sense of the scale involved. These permit revenue streams are a relatively small amount relative to the size of recent transfers. And it's also the case that not all of that 239,000 would be diverted under the new permitting scheme only, right? Only a certain subset of current LFO or MFO permit holders would switch over to the CAFO permit fee. So overall, in talking with ANR and AAFM, this seems to have a de minimis impact on state revenues.
de minimis.
But AAFM could certainly speak in more detail about any program implications that would stem from this reduced ag water quality special. AAFM. Yeah.
Can you email the contact to Charlotte?
Sure.
And we will see if they would like to come in and talk. Committee, any questions? We all understand the complexities. Okay. We heard the word de minimis, and we're not raising or lowering anything. Nobody's going to pay 2 fees, even if they technically owe them. And we are taking money from one fund and putting it into another. It's being paid to another because the program that they are now being regulated under this new program to meet the federal requirements is being administered by ANR and not by agriculture.
That's correct.
Okay.
The only other detail I would add to this is on the appropriation side, and it's not in this bill. This bill does not make any appropriations, but there is some additional work that will be taken on by ANR to perform these additional permitting functions. And in the big bill, the budget bill appropriations act, there's an $850,000 appropriation from the general fund to ANR to help support some of the new functions they'll be taking on to do this work. But again, that's in the big bill, not in this bill in front of you today. Just part of the picture of some of the ongoing work.
Okay, yeah, I wonder if this bill will go to approach, if it, probably not.
Not
It's
this
not
bill.
going to have a de minimis effect on what they've already transferred. And nothing says they have to transfer. Okay. Committee, questions, discussion. Okay,
I can tell you, I mean,
yeah,
Scott and I have worked on this bill. I've worked on this bill a lot this session. ANR and AG are in agreement. They are both supportive of the bill, and I, in large part, they know they have to do it. They're required by what's left of the EPA.
remember the last time the feds threatened to take over, this committee didn't find a funding source for the Clean Water Fund. So they wouldn't. So apparently the threat is there at least now. All right. Good. I've got 2 of you that are on that committee. All right. You can flip the coin for who's going to be a reporter. Any other questions?
Nice to meet you, James.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. Okay, committee. Lot of these. We have 398, which is the VITA modernization bill. It changes some terminology. It puts the description of our job Sustainable Jobs Strategy takes it off of a letter from a former governor, it puts it into statute. And removes the reference to the letter from the governor. Lays it out. Changes the word state to, what are we calling VEDA now? Not the association, the agency, I think. Because it is not the state that is doing the loaning, it is the agency which has the moral obligation, but not the full faith and credit of the state. We are not legally, but nobody will ever do business with us again if we don't back up the actions of the agency. So, but it is, if the state were doing the loans, then the full faith and credit of the state would be involved. Other than that, it's moves over, I forget, 20,000 or 200. It moves what's left in the Vermont job. 2 million. It
Yeah.
was Vermont VGAP. Which was the money used to help businesses that were impacted by the flood. That is going in here to be the seed money for a future loan program for natural disasters. And they don't necessarily have to be FEMA, natural disasters, FEMA designated, federally designated. Okay. What is your pleasure on this bill? Do we need more testimony? Are we ready to make a motion?
I just forwarded to all of you the email that I got from Ellen Taylor at the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. Because I raised the question about whether she thought putting the Sustainable Jobs Strategy in statute would be confusing, given the name and, the two funds that are similar in name. And you can see what she wrote, basically she read the bill and the fiscal note and, basically said, well, it's unfortunate that the names are so close. It would be too much work to change them, given all of the stuff that's already in, in play, and that she's okay with it, and that she and Zeta and the Sustainable Jobs Fund work closely with, they're good partners with each other, and they would not, they can always, and they can live with it, basically. But I just wanted to make sure and check with her, and so I just sent you what she said for the record.
Okay,
I just read it, it was good. Yeah. I'll make a motion if you want to approve H 398. We didn't make me change it out, right? As in concurrence or
okay.
received. Sure.
Okay, you have a second? Second, go on. Any further discussion? Amendments? What we'll call the roll.
Senator Chittenden,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Ulick,
Yes.
Senator Beck,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Mattos, yes. Senator Cummings.
Yes.
7-0.
7-0. What a team. Who would like to report this?
You can do this one. Is it? Yeah, this is good.
We just gave you a big one, didn't we?
Actually,
No, get me a big one.
Gave it to you. Okay, if you want to do this one, all right.
did you want?
Yeah, you should do that. I would like to do a finance bill before the end of the year, but it doesn't have.
We'll find
you one.
Yeah, I am doing a lot of, we're doing a lot of health and welfare bills.
What about Beck? Beck, what about?
I don't mean to hog it, please.
He's
They'll do the ag
he's
one.
gonna,
No,
They'll
I'm
do the
doing the
ag
ag one. That's my bill. I put so much work into that bill.
you guys can either fight or flip a coin. Decide.
Last chance, you want it?
You got it.
I think when we get to education transformation, we may need to put Senator Beck.
Cool.
Damn you.
And Hardy.
Yeah.
Before we get at, this bill is going to be so massive, we'll all take a
I
step.
was gonna say we can do.
Green energy.
Okay. I think
But you gotta.
that
vote
is
for
it
to
for
get started.
today.
True.
Um,
So true.